And now we come to step 5 of building out your model, my favorite step. This is where all of our hard work finally pays off. Now we've taken a look at the first 4 steps already. First off, we have to know our numbers. We must be measuring the right metrics. Second, we need to define the user journey, include both conversions of steps and goals. Third, we need to know our conversion rate, simple mathematical calculations, which hopefully you have already worked out as well. And fourthly, something I hope you've also done is building out your historical models based upon historical data. Now we begin to build campaign scenarios. Now let's define this first. A campaign scenario, you can read along, is simply a hypothesis or educated guess based on the metrics of how much it will cost to earn a lead from specific channels and marketing campaigns, right? This is based upon our historical models. This is the lowest hanging fruit. By doing this, you can begin to see which campaigns and channels are weak and others strong, or which ones need work or will be a success. In setting up campaign scenarios, it is really a hypothesis on what will work for future marketing efforts based on historical data. Now we do this naturally all the time, don't we? For instance, let's say every time you visit a certain restaurant, you get sick. Every time. You learn after a while that you should avoid that restaurant, right? Future behavior based upon past effects, past data. A really bad analogy, I know, but it illustrates what we're doing here. In other words, this is experience based on historical data that is being formulated into a model that lets you determine with some accuracy future ROI of your marketing efforts. Now compare this to traditional marketing departments. At this point of the discussion concerning future marketing efforts, the gloves come off in the conference room and business politics come to the forefront, and generally HIPAA wins, right? Highest paid person's opinion wins. However, with this model, we have now introduced a reality check. You can see now, is it believable? Is this hypothesis really good and accurate? Is the campaign going to pay off? We can start to see if an investment in a marketing campaign is really going to be worth it before we even start. So let's look at an example. Now here's the sample scenario with sample numbers at the very bottom of the funnel from 2 separate channels, organic and social. Now let's say you have a decent organic presence. It could use a lot of help, but you are garnering some non-branded traffic. On the other hand, you have a very passionate and talented social media guru who is driving a ton of traffic through both legitimate campaigns and the fair share of clickbait. Now let me ask this. Is traffic a good enough metric for success? For many people and marketing departments, the answer is yes. When you look at this table though, social has 3 times as much traffic as organic. Now obviously I'm using fake numbers to make a point, but I have seen this philosophy on a regular basis. The common result, the common conclusion is that social is better than organic. Just look at the traffic. However, just a cursory high-level overview of the leads, sales conversion rates, average lead value, and revenue starts to tell a different story. Right off, you can see that social visitors convert at a much lower rate. Leads to sales, for instance, is 50% versus just 9%. Again, exaggerated numbers to make a point. Social visitors also purchase less, right? Hence a lower average lead value. And we see the end result of revenue, the most important number for any business, being dramatically different. Although social was pulling in far more traffic, the conversion rates leaned in favor of organic, hence the much higher revenue. Again, this is a very simplistic example, but I want to underscore why metrics are important by looking at goals and targets. Let's say your goal is to earn an extra $10,000. You can see right off that once you start to look at the numbers, it is difficult to justify achieving your revenue goals by targeting just social. You would need 15 new sales and 170 new leads based upon your historical metrics and conversion rates. Now, this doesn't mean you neglect social campaigns entirely, but you are now able to place the proper priority on right channels and campaigns. Let's look at this sample scenario in funnel format. Again, the purpose of doing this is to do a reality check. Do the numbers add up? Let me set up this scenario. Again, your goal is an extra $10,000, right? So new sales from organic would be 8. New sales from social would be 15. This funnel shows a 50% close rate from SQL accounts for organic and 9% for social. So the new leads would be 16 for organic versus 170 for social. Now let's say both organic and social convert MQL to SQL at 80%. This is normally a very high percentage. Let's also say that 20% of prospects convert to MQLs for both channels. Again, we'll keep the conversion rates similar here, and you would add in your own specific numbers. So the visitor to MQL lead would be 0.66% conversion rate for organic and 0.51% conversion rate for social. Take my word for it right now. Go back and do the numbers in a bit. But here's the result. I just put in kind of the final numbers for you. We would need 3,000 new organic visitors, which is an increase of 20% from 15,000 to 18,000. That's doable, right? It's going to require a lot of work, but it is achievable to grow by 20%. Social, though, we would need to deliver over 40,000 more visitors. That is nearly double the amount of social traffic that is already being generated. It's possible, but it is a long shot to meet your numbers by going the social route. Now, obviously, the conclusion should be obvious. Again, it doesn't mean you neglect social only for organic, because social is still working. However, when choices have to be made concerning marketing dollars, you are now able to show a more predictable ROI for marketing spend. This is not going to be accurate 100%, right? I think we can kind of understand that. But the point is you're going to be much more accurate than if you were just to take a blind stab in the dark. Now, if the goals don't work for any combination of funnels, then you have one of a few options. You either have to take another look at your goals, talk to your leadership and say, we've got to reduce the numbers, or you have to dramatically increase conversion rates, which is possible through CRO, or you will need to identify how to place more visitors in the funnel through some other channel or method. That's SEO, and obviously optimizing other channels. The question still remains, what is the hypothesis on the source of best MQLs? Well, the answer is MQLs can come from anywhere, but we need to scientifically find the best source of ROI and identify weak areas we can work on. The point is simply this: metrics can really help here. Now, we're going to look later in session 6 on the value of UTM codes in order to improve your tracking throughout the entire funnel, something called full funnel reporting. But the goal here right now is we need to build enough funnels so that you can begin to see where your MQLs are coming from and how to focus on the highest converting channels while improving the poorest performers. On tab 3 of the homework for session 1, we can begin to now build out a very basic funnel in order to see conversion rates. Now, these historical conversion rates, as we just went through, are extremely important when we get to the next stage of building out your model and ultimately building out future scenarios. Again, without these historical conversion rates, then you are simply guessing at how well a certain social or email campaign will do. However, empowered with these numbers, you have an opportunity to approach marketing activity with more accurate hypotheses in the results. And so what I've done for you is I built out a few just simple funnels here. This one is a B2C example. It's got 4 stages: visit website, view the product, added product to cart, and purchase product. Now, these are the numbers you want to change right here in the black. These conversion rates, again, a very simple calculation. This chart is a little more complicated, hence this column over here, column N. You'll see the chart creator, and it goes through some kind of fancy calculations that gives you more of a visualization. This is more for grins and giggles and just spices up a little bit. There is software that does this for you, and it actually creates beautiful funnels. But for now, this is the column we're really concerned about. Fill out column C, the values, and then take a look here at the conversion rates. This is where you want to see if there's any drop-offs. So again, very simple examples. You can build out 100 of these based upon the primary conversion that you have already identified. In this case, the B2C example, purchase product is the primary conversion. It's what you want people to do if you have a B2C website. Often in a B2B example, the primary conversion is filled out forms. So that's the macro conversion. And these are the steps that lead up to that macro primary conversion. And so again, just fill out the numbers, and now you start to see the conversion rates fill out. And another B2B example is now we start to segment by channel, right? Here's organic, here's social. Now, I would suggest not having many steps here because the purpose of the funnel is to identify the necessary steps that you are able to optimize. Therefore, I would avoid putting non-necessary pages in these funnels. For instance, pages like the About page or Contact page or even certain category pages may just be too narrowly focused and are not part of the conversion journey for most users. So the goal here is to create all the necessary funnels that are important for your website so you can begin to identify if there are leaks in your conversion journey. Now, we'll also explore this in more detail in session 3. So have fun with this and let me know if you have any questions. So far in this session, we have approached building your model from a theoretical perspective. So I want to take a few minutes to take a practical look at building out real-world campaigns. Now, to do so, I want to use several common examples that you probably use on a regular basis. Let's first take a look at a typical email campaign. Now, in this email example, let's say we are sending a webinar email. These numbers are all made up, but not completely unreasonable. So remember, as we go through these practical examples, it's important for you to understand how we are modeling each campaign so you can input your own historical numbers. Now, in this example, 20,000 emails were sent to a sample lead list announcing an upcoming webinar. Of the 20,000 emails, 20% of them were opened, equaling 4,000. Of those that opened the email, 25% of them clicked on the primary CTA to sign up for a webinar, which is the 1,000. Now, after landing on the landing page, 40% of these prospects ended up signing up for the webinar, totaling 400. Now, after the webinar, depending upon who showed up in the engagement with sales and marketing, let's say that there were about 50 opportunities created. Now, a quick and important side note. Every organization has a different way of classifying an opportunity created. For some, it's an SQL, sales qualified lead. Others, it's an SAL, sales accepted lead, or even an MQL, marketing qualified lead. Or maybe it's even points-based. Just make sure you and your team are clear on how you define an opportunity. So of those 50 ops created in this example, 20 deals were closed at a 40% close rate, which again isn't completely unreasonable. Because we want to track marketing campaigns all the way through the funnel, the total revenue earned is $4,000, meaning the average customer value, or ACV, is $200, right? 20 deals totaling $4,000 is a $200 ACV. Now, here's why building out a model like this is important. Let's say you run a monthly webinar. Now, month 1 and month 2 are relatively normal and average. There's not a lot of variance between the original email distribution lists, click-through rates, registrants, close rates, and ACV, right? They all look fairly similar. Now, it's important to note that nearly every organization is squarely focused on deals closed and revenue. Now, there's good reason for that, right? As these numbers keep the lights on and food on the table. So we have to be focused on dollars earned as well. This is called the full funnel. So again, in looking at this chart, I want you to notice that when we come to month 3, all of a sudden we see a huge drop in numbers across the board. Instead of around 20,000 recipients, webinar 3 was only emailed to about half of that, which dramatically affected all the other numbers. Now, I chose this simple example because you think this would be obvious, right? We send the email to half of the number of people, our numbers are going to be down. However, this is actually what happened to a client of mine. They were racking their brains trying to figure out why one of their webinars was underperforming. But once they built out their model for the webinar, it was very clear as to where the drop-off occurred. Now, a chart like this will be very important when we focus on conversion rate optimization in session 3. Because if we want to increase deals closed and revenue earned, we either have to widen the top of our funnel up in this section or improve the conversion rates throughout the buyer's journey. However, it may not always be this simple. So let's take a look at a little more complicated example. Now, in this next example, we are looking at a common social campaign. Let's say for this social campaign, you boost a post that is promoting an ebook, right? This can easily be done on platforms like Facebook or LinkedIn. Now, let's just keep it fairly simple. Your ad is served up 10,000 times. That is, you have 10,000 impressions. You have a 5% click-through rate totaling 500 clicks. Of the 500 prospects who land on your ebook landing page, 100 of them downloaded your product ebook. Now, since this was a hyper-targeted social campaign, your sales team closed 20% of the ops created, equaling 20 closed-won deals, totaling $4,000 earned revenue, which is an ACV of $200. Again, your own numbers will make a lot more sense with a model like this. But the reason why building out a model is important is that not only do you see conversion leaks within your own model, but you can quickly compare successes and failures of this campaign with other campaigns. Take, for instance, these 3 campaigns. The first campaign we just went through, where there were 500 social clicks that ended up in 20 deals closed. The second campaign had twice that with 1,000 clicks, but still had only 20 deals closed. Notice, though, the 50,000 impressions for this campaign. We'll get back to that in a bit. The third campaign had slightly more clicks at 700. They closed 30 deals with the ACV of only 133. Now, without going into too much detail, you can quickly see how this is extremely valuable for a team. Because in one single screenshot, you're able to see where the leaks are in your conversion rate or where your ad collateral is simply not resonating with your audience. Again, the second campaign had collateral, messaging, or a CTA that evidently didn't resonate with the target audience, right? Look at these very poor conversion rates when compared with your other campaigns. And as you can see, $6,000 was spent on this campaign, but yielded only $4,000 in revenue, right? This is not the business model that you want. However, although campaign 3 had normal social interaction, the engaged audience is simply not as valuable as the first campaign by the ACV. The goal here is to learn over time what works and what doesn't work. You'll begin to see averages and are able to optimize your campaigns based on past feedback. However, without a complete model like this, you will be flying blind every time you post a social. Let's look at one last real-world example that just happened to one of my clients a couple of weeks ago. Now, like all campaigns and channels, let's start with the basic model. In this case, we are looking at a paid ad campaign. Now, a typical paid ad will look very similar to a social boost, so let's use the same numbers as in our last example. We have 10,000 impressions, 500 clicks, 100 ops created, 20 deals closed, and $4,000 earned. Remember though, when you are building out your own models, you'll begin to develop your own averages, meaning you are able to determine how much a click is worth in dollars earned. For instance, 500 clicks earned us $4,000 in this sample example. Each click then is worth $8 to the brand. Therefore, your cost per click bid should be quite a bit less than $8, right, per click. Knowing this number is important because it is part of what makes up the LTV to CAC ratio. That's the lifetime value to customer acquisition cost ratio. Now, because there are a number of different expenses that go into acquiring a customer, knowing how much a paid ad click is worth in revenue is invaluable for your business. Before we look at this example though, I feel it is important to say that in a typical campaign, there are a number of moving parts. Thus, the more variations from one campaign to another, the more difficult it becomes to narrow down what worked and what didn't across your various campaigns, making developing averages that much more difficult. And that's exactly what happened to this one client in their paid ads. Here's some sample data that is similar to what we went through with the client. They were running a monthly webinar, and one of their sources of traffic was paid ads, hence the 3 different paid ads, one for each month. Now, paid ad 1 and 2 are almost identical. Since the ads and landing pages are very similar, there's not much difference between these 2 months. However, In month number 3, you will notice a huge drop-off in webinar signups. With this model, we were able to quickly trace it back to the paid clicks and ultimately impressions. Right off, we removed much of the mystery as to why the webinar signups were underperforming, because we were able to compare paid ad 3 with other historical ad numbers and averages. So for the client, we ended up walking through each paid ad, comparing messaging, CTAs, audience targeting, and the different settings for each paid ad. We finally located that the underperforming ad was accidentally limited to display only on mobile devices. Now, upon further sleuthing, we realized that the mobile device category was actually performing normally, but we had just excluded desktops and tablets for this one paid ad, hence resulting in very low impressions. Now, these are basic, simple examples, but you can quickly see how valuable building out your own historical models can become over time. Because as you do, you'll begin to see average click-through rates, average customer acquisition costs, and average customer value. Knowing these numbers will help you not only build better models and optimize campaigns, but it will help you make better business decisions because you will finally be able to clarify the ROI for your different marketing activities. Meaning, you will know where to spend your dollars and why one channel is more valuable to you over another. However, without building out your own model for each channel, you are simply flying blind when it comes to your marketing efforts.